Call the meeting to order. This is a meeting of the Hampden Board of Selectmen and the Board of Health being held in Townhouse Auditorium, September 13th, 2021 at 6 p.m. The meeting is being conducted in person and remotely using video conferencing technology.
That's good.
Is it working?
Looks good.
As allowed by the Governor's Emergency Order of March 2020. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Is anyone recording the meeting other than us? Please indicate in some way. Seeing none, we'll continue. Is there any minutes?
There are none.
Not minutes, okay. First item on our agenda is Michelle. Listen, okay.
Welcome, Michelle.
Welcome, Michelle. And she's going to speak to us about the crumbling concrete commission and the situation currently.
Yes, okay.
Thank you.
My first question is, do you have the PowerPoint? If not, I have copies for everyone, so.
No, I'm sorry.
I'm prepared for that. Okay.
Okay.
I'd like to give you each one of these, and then I
Thank
will
you.
explain it
Put up the PowerPoint.
and go over what's been happening.
Maybe he needs a little bit of water.
Okay, I'm here as a representative of a homeowners group. And we are advocating for some help in the state of Massachusetts that is similar to what's happening in Connecticut. Because as you can see from the cover page here, foundations in Massachusetts are looking like this too, not just in Connecticut. And it's all caused by mineral. If you go to page 2, the mineral is called pyrrhotite, and it is coming from a quarry in our area anyway, from a quarry in Willington, Connecticut, and a company from Stafford Springs, Connecticut, J.J. Lotus, poured foundations using aggregate from that quarry. At the beginning of time for them, they did not know that this mineral was there. And until a couple of months ago, there's no testing in Connecticut for it. So there was no way to know that it was in the quarry. So I'll use that information in a minute, but anyway. So here you see the piece of concrete on the left-hand side of that photograph has chunks of this aggregate in it, and what happens is it begins to rust once it's mixed with concrete and water and oxygen. And it starts this chemical process and this degradation of the concrete. The pyrrhotite expands and it cracks, and the more it cracks, the more it lets water in, and the more it lets water in, the more it cracks, and so on, and it starts lifting and bowing the walls of the foundation. So the picture on the other side of that page is an actual photograph of a foundation in Wales. And we've been there with legislators to see it, and they could not wait to get out of that basement because it doesn't look like it's safe to be in, honestly. So to the next picture, this map shows you in red where pyrrhotite can be found. In Connecticut, it's at the tip of that middle section that goes from Massachusetts into Connecticut. That's where that came from. It's causing this problem in our area. But as you can see, there's red that goes up into Massachusetts, particularly into Worcester County. It's very concerning because we are now finding homes affected by this in Holden, Rutland, Barry, Grafton. They've all been tested for the mineral, and because the foundations are showing signs of this issue. Just recently, we've added a number of towns now to this map. So this map that you have on the next page, that's all highlighted in yellow, you'll see those towns. You can now add Spencer to this as well. And I am reasonably certain that those towns in between will eventually, when people start to come forward, and that's a difficult thing to do, but when they do, this map's going to fill in more. In Connecticut, there's over 40 towns affected, and we have over 20 already. And we've really just started, getting people to come forward in the last couple of years. So on the next page, it says, how are homes made whole again? Well, you'll see this home down in the bottom corner. That's what that home looked like before they realized they had a problem. It was beautiful. And then that home is lifted above that. And this, on this side of the picture, you can see the man that looks like he's standing on a Jenga game. That's called cribbing. That's how they support the home after, so that they can lift it off of the foundation, tear the foundation out and replace it. This home cost $280,000 to do that for.
To fix that,
Excuse me?
to fix that.
To fix it, to replace that foundation, because that is the only way to do this. When you hear companies trying to come forward and saying, I can help you, I take care of concrete cracks, I can fill that for you, you'll be all set. That is a massive waste of money and really insulting to the person's emotional well-being, because this is really difficult for people to deal with. Imagine finding out that everything that you worked for your whole life is suddenly, your equity's gone. You have none. When my husband and I found out, we went to Munson Savings Bank to see what we could do. Mortgage president said to us, well, there's not much we can do for you. You have no equity. The only equity you have is in the land. But if you want to knock your house down and start over, and we'll give you a construction loan. My husband and I just retired. My husband's about to. We aren't financially able to get another mortgage at our age. And there are a lot of people out there that are buying homes right now without an inspection, waiving inspections in this crazy market that we have. I really hesitate for people to do that. Because if you are not having that inspection on that foundation, and if your inspector isn't familiar with this problem, a young couple just starting out could end up with a home like this, and then they have this massive mortgage along with a home that's really worthless. I just can't imagine that happening. The rest of us that have been attending these meetings are largely people like myself, nearing retirement. I just found out that that nest egg that we hoped we had to, sell it and downsize and be able to live comfortably for our retirement years is gone. It's pretty devastating. I tell you, it's you find yourself going in and out of denial. You say, well, maybe my foundation isn't that bad. Maybe mine will be okay. Then you find out, I really should look into this more, and you have a structural engineer come in and they look at it, and ours said, good news, bad news. Good news is ours is moving slowly, because we've done a number of things to mitigate the issue unknowingly. We had a spring when we dug our cellar hole, so we had to put in an extensive footing drain. Still runs perfectly to this day, 26 years later. We've backfilled with sand, we've coated the walls, we've run a dehumidifier, we've done everything we can, and yet we still have cracking happening. And he said, so the bad news is, you're gonna have to stay here because you're not gonna be able to sell your house. Our son had wanted to buy our home and raise his family in the home that he grew up in. Let us go downsize, but he can't get a mortgage for it. So it's kind of stuck. So what do? You get it core tested to be sure. First you get the structural engineer inspection, and you can see on the next page how they drill for the core test. That gets, the company that we use, they come in and they drilled it, and then we sent it down to Trinity College in Connecticut, and they developed a test for pyrrhotite. For 2 cores, you spend $1,900, you find out whether you have the pyrrhotite in your foundation or not, and the state is reimbursing that at 75% up to $5,000, and they'll pay up to $400 on the structural engineer fee. But that's all we have in Massachusetts right now. So why are we advocating for help? Because there's no recourse. As I said earlier, it's a mineral. It's a natural disaster is what this is, because it's a mineral in the aggregate that was mixed into the concrete. as is normal practice, and there was no testing for the mineral, so there's no negligence on anyone's part. So there's no one to sue. They've tried in Connecticut and failed on that basis. There's no insurance coverage. Quite frankly, this is the part that bugs me the most. You pay your homeowner's bill, and just when you need it, foundations aren't covered. And 6 months before that we found out we had this issue, our homeowner's coverage was rewritten to be worded that it will only cover an abrupt collapse of the home. And if you have a reason that you knew of that could lead to a collapse, then you're not covered because you didn't mitigate it. For us, mitigating is going to cost $263,000. So it wasn't happening, and for most people, it can't. We had nowhere to turn, so we turned to our legislators to find out if they knew about this and what was going on. We formed this group because even now in Connecticut, they range an average price of $150,000 to $300,000 depending on the size of the home. So we started advocating, and the state formed a special commission in 2019, and we held a number of meetings and came up with recommendations and a special report. You can see on here is the cover of the report. And then we had legislators come out and see it for themselves because, it's not real until you see it. And when you do, it's pretty devastating. Like I said, we had aides that worked for Congressman Neal and Senator Goby and Representative Ash all in the background saying, can I leave now? They didn't want to be in this house. So from the commission, after all that, we had a list in that report of all these 10 recommendations. And of that, in Senate Bill 548, an act relative to crumbling concrete foundations, are these recommendations right here. And I just want to say a couple words about them. Property tax abatements will happen as residents in your town come forward and say, okay, now my house is worthless. Why am I paying the full boat of taxes on it? As a town employee at the time for the town of Munson, I had a real difficult time making that decision to come forward, but we had to start somewhere, putting a little pressure politically to say, towns are going to need this help, not just their residents, not just the homeowners. And it's true. In Connecticut, as homeowners came forward, the tax abatements had to happen, and town revenues went down. And when revenues go down from all of these homeowners, the other homeowners are going to have to pick up the difference. So it really does affect everyone. So that's a big part of this bill. And then eliminating permit fees for doing the foundation replacement, mostly because homeowners have already paid one way or another, either after the fact or in building, to build the house. Why should they have to pay for this permit again? Seller disclosures, so no unsuspecting buyer would be sold one of these homes. Such a morally wrong thing to do, but it's happening. And then beginning quarry standards. Testing for this mineral is absolutely necessary. Connecticut just passed a law a couple of months ago to start this, so we don't see this happening again. Because here in Massachusetts, as you saw from that map, we're pretty sure we have a quarry in the Worcester County area. Because those people from Rutland, Holden, and Barry, it's very unlikely their concrete came from Stafford Springs, Connecticut, when they have a quarry and concrete providers right there locally. So that's something that really needs to happen. The very most important thing to homeowners right now is to enable a captive insurance company to operate in Massachusetts. It's not like an insurance company where you buy a policy and it's covered. It is a mechanism to manage funds that are put in from the government. Connecticut has put money in, and they've also started a surcharge on every homeowner's policy of $12 a year, and that goes into the fund to help these homeowners. The captive manages the whole program, and that's what we need here, but Massachusetts law doesn't currently allow for that. So the legislation is meant to help with that, to get those things started. And then our last slide here is, how can you help? As a homeowner, as a neighbor, or as a select board member. We have been going town to town And so far, Munson, Wales, Holland, Brimfield, Sturbridge, Charlton have all voted to send a letter from the town, from the select board, to the joint committee responsible for the bill, as listed on this page here, encouraging a prompt hearing on the bill and that it be voted out favorably for further action legislatively. If it doesn't get a hearing, it doesn't go anywhere. And we're stuck even longer, and I'm gonna tell you, this poor man in Wales doesn't have that much time before he's gonna have to move out of his house. Because he's retired and doesn't have the funds to replace it. So that's why I'm here tonight, to ask you as a board if you would do the same as the other towns and send that letter to that joint committee. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
I have a question. Did that company also make septic tanks?
Oh, it certainly did. There was a large supplier of septic tanks over those years. Homes affected in our area range from 1983 to 2015. That's when they stopped using the aggregate from that quarry voluntarily. They had a written voluntary agreement with the state of Connecticut.
So they used it between 1983 and 2015?
Yes, and it takes on average about 20 years for the cracking to show up.
I know his little mind saying,
I know.
I put my subject tank?
I'm gonna tell you, if it wasn't so necessary for this to be done here like it is in Connecticut, I'm not sure I could do this, because I feel like the Grim Reaper everywhere I go, coming in and saying to people.
Well, you're doing good work, though.
Yeah. Oh, no. You know, it's,
Citizen activism is the most important thing.
I had to do something. I couldn't just sit there and take this and then see all these other people affected. You know, my husband and I, we are not going to, if this happens, we are not going to be the first in line getting our foundation replaced, because ours is not the worst. This poor guy in Wales, I can tell you, he needs his foundation replaced soon, and there's others like him. There have been, I know of 3 families, 2 in Charlton and 1 in Hampden, who did this job, and 1 in Long Meadow, 4, who did this job by borrowing from family, friends, retirement funds, no matter how, they found a way, but it has put off retirements. I mean, it's changed lives. To be able to save their home because it had to be done. It couldn't wait.
Was Gobi the one that initiated the S-548, or was that
Yes.
something, it was him?
Yes, she's been quite fantastic. I'm gonna tell you, between her and Brian Ash, I don't know where we'd be. They've been fantastic.
Did Richie Neal say anything, any potential for federal funds for this?
Well, that's why this is so important right now. Ann Gobi really feels like this is like the golden hour for us. Because of all this federal funding that's coming into the state, there's $5 billion in American Rescue Plan funds coming in. The estimate on what we would need for the homes that they expect, and I know the number is probably going to go up because of the Worcester County issue, but they were figuring around 2,000 in this area on an average of 175 cap, because that's what Connecticut did. It put it at a cap of 175 out there. It's all based on linear footage and square footage of the flooring, rates per. And if you figure that 2,000 homes at 175, that's like $350 million. Sounds like a lot until you say that's only 7% of $5 billion. So now's the time. Now's the time to make this happen. So we're trying to show this committee that there is support amongst not just the residents, but from the town's point of view as well.
Anything else, no questions?
No, I think it's a terrific spot for us to endorse, with our, obviously, other towns in this area. Commend Brian and Rep. Gobi for taking the initiative of this, and of course, Richie for coming back to his district on occasion. But again, you're right. You are 100% right. With that, and I hate to call it gravy train or whatever, but it shouldn't go to projects that are just feel good. This is the project that helps the most people. And this is where that money, when it talks about rescue plan, This is a rescue plan.
Yes, it is. And, you know, in Connecticut, not only did it help homeowners affected, it created a market. So at the beginning, when homes were costing $250,000 and more to replace the foundation, once the market was created, more contractors became involved with it. And next thing you know, the average price is down to like 158.
Well, and the money's going into the local economy as well. You're hiring the local guy to do the work.
Exactly. So now you have these companies working, they're employing people. It's a win
Right.
for everyone, including the municipality that had lost all this revenue. So now they get all that revenue back, and the other taxpayers get a break. You know, so it's,
And you see both sides, having worked in the months in government.
Yes.
You really see both sides.
yes, I do, and it really felt wrong to go, and, you know, I spent a lot of time with our tax assessor, and she said to me, do not feel bad, you have lost the value of your home is no longer worth what it was. We have to abate your taxes, it's the right thing to do. I said, okay.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to have the town administrator write a letter of support for this issue.
Second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. If needed, I can share a sample of what some of the other towns.
Those are the
do.
best.
That'll just-
Okay.
that'll be
I
good.
will gladly
Okay.
do that. I
And we
email that.
will make it even better.
Okay,
Just starting.
And we're going to these email addresses here?
yes, please. Appreciate
Thank you,
that.
Michelle.
Thank you.
Keep at it, keep at it.
Thank you.
We will. Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is I kept on the agenda candidates for planning board appointments and joined me with the planning board. I had sent a letter to the planning board asking them, suggesting to them that we meet jointly to interview the remaining 3 candidates and then discuss the candidates and pick 2 the vacancy. I offered them a meeting this week or any other week, and also I offered a special meeting. I received a response today in which they weren't interested in doing that. They wanted to interview the candidates themselves and make a recommendation. They questioned my motivation for wanting to do this on 2 occasions in the letter. And the motivation is simple. It's the most efficient way to do it. Every other town does it that way. We have a responsibility as the select board to cast a vote, so it would be good if we could look at all the candidates at one time together and move on with the process. So we're left with 3 options. There was a couple of options. Number 1, we can wait for their recommendation and rubber stamp it, which I will not do. Number 2, we can interview all the candidates ourselves at some other time. Or number 3, we can interview them individually, or we can attend their meeting on Wednesday night, sit there, have no input, and then see what the recommendation is. My question is, what if we decide that one of the people that we see in the interview we like better than one of the recommendations? How do we do that nomination? How do we get that person's name before the full board? We have to talk about that. Personally, it's very discouraging for me because it's just I don't understand it. I don't understand it, and I had hoped that we could do this in an efficient manner where everyone could see all the candidates, but apparently there's some hesitancy to do that. One of the things they cite is precedent. Well, you know, they kept asking, why now? Why now? Well, why now? Because there's 2 openings and we're in a time squeeze, so that's why now. And number 2, what difference does it make how it's done? I know they have, you know, and they pointed out that it hasn't been done in the past that way. No, and oftentimes we're lucky we get someone to apply for a position. This time we have 6 people, so it would behoove us as responsibility for the town to appoint the best person, and I'd like to look at all 6 of them. So what's your choice? We could wait till the 20th, see what their recommendation is. We can go off on our own, interview the 6 people ourselves. We can vote all 6 of them down and start all over.
Well, I plan on going to the meeting on Wednesday just to listen to the other 3 candidates. I listened to the other 3 in the Zoom meeting, so I mean, I have a knowledge of their background, but I'd like to hear from the other 3, so.
Same here. I mean, I thought they were responsive. Don did send a list of questions he'd like to have asked of the three candidates, and the chair did ask those questions. Don, you were in attendance, as was I. I know that last year, for instance, there was an opening on the planning board, and they had three candidates, of which the select board at that time did not make any effort to participate in the interview process then.
True.
And that was 3 down to 1. Basically, we have the same 3 to 1 right now. So I do see that there is an avenue for us to participate in the process. They were certainly willing to ask these questions. I would certainly behoove us to attend the meeting, be participants in the discussion, see the other three
Well, we
candidates.
can't because we're not posted. And that would be a deliberation. So all we
What
can do is
deliberation?
listen.
Why can't we ask like we did before? We attended the meetings for the storage units as citizens and asked questions. We can listen. If they're asking the questions we submitted, we're listening to those answers.
I believe the difference is in the storage unit thing, is that we don't have a vote. So it doesn't matter what we say at the storage meeting. I mean, we're just citizens there. In this particular occasion, we have a vote. So we would be deliberating on something that we have a vote on.
If we deliberated that night.
I think town council even advised that we don't
Say
interact.
anything.
I don't recall any, we got advice from town council, it wasn't shared with the board,
It was in an email to all of us.
not go to the planning board interviews.
No, she didn't
If
say
we're not-
that. She didn't say that. She said, go to the planning board interviews, but do not participate.
Right, which is, as I said, you provided questions and asked them to go.
Yeah.
If you would like to go, as Craig and I said, we either plan on going or watching it on Zoom. That would allow one member to go if you wish to participate, and we'll just watch what they say, but I think it's.
I just don't understand why they're adverse to doing this jointly when we all have a vote, an equal vote. It's just, I don't understand it. And I never will. And I understand, we haven't done in the past.
For any board.
No, school committee, we interviewed 3 people with the other school committee person there.
That's under a different part of MGL. We had an opening on the assessors a couple of years ago where you and I didn't make an
I
issue to
understand.
say,
Right.
Parks and Rec as well.
Yeah, and the more I thought about it, I thought to myself, why? I know, they think, I know what they think. They think it's some kind of power play, it's gonna diminish their power and all, and the selectmen are getting into their knickers and we're horrible people for questioning them. I mean, they got all upset because we had the audacity to make recommendations, which are required to by law. But we gotta get beyond that and do what's best for the town. What's best for the town is for all 6 of us to sit down and interview the people. It's not gonna happen, so we're gonna do it their way, and we'll see what happens Monday night when they bring these recommendations up. Mary Ellen?
Well, I was on the board when the last vacancy occurred, and I was uncomfortable at the time that we hadn't seen both candidates. But I was new to the board, and I was probably remiss in not bringing up my concerns at that time. But I think anytime you're in a position where you're voting, and both boards are voting this decision together, that you should have as much information as you can possibly get to make the most intelligent decision and the most independent decision you can get. I think that gives the public more confidence in the decision, and I think that it makes you feel that you've done your job. So I would, I don't have any say in what's going to happen, and I don't, my position doesn't make much difference, but at least I have expressed it, and I think that it's shared by a number of people that think that informed votes are better than uninformed votes, and you get informed when you talk to the person.
We just had one other thing. I think that if we're going to move the town forward, everyone has to get out of their silo and start thinking about the bigger picture. That's all I have to say. So Wednesday night's the meeting.
Yep.
They got a couple of things on their agenda. Monday, they say they're gonna make their recommendations, and we'll see what the recommendations are, if we agree or don't agree. But I do need you to find out what would be the process of doing this? Who's chairing the meeting? And number 2 is, what if one of us decides that candidate D is better than their A and B? How do they get?
I'll get an opinion, but if they join your meeting, you're the chair.
Right.
If the selectmen joins their meeting,
That ought to go well.
their chair is in charge of the meeting, so.
Okay,
So it depends on who joins what, who
Okay.
joins which meeting.
okay.
So if they join the selectmen, I assume you're the chair. If the selectmen Wednesday night join their meeting,
John's the chair.
John is the chair.
Right, okay.
All right, on Wednesday night, we also do have a bit of a conflict. Concom is also meeting, and they're discussing the Main Street water
Water thing,
as
right.
well. I think if it's appropriate, I would typically, well, you're the Concom liaison.
Okay.
However, I kind of been hunting the project as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
It's up to
yeah.
you, which would you prefer? I go to that one and then.
I want to go to the planning board one.
All right, so, and honestly, if Craig, if you are watching via Zoom, we don't have a conflict.
Yeah.
We don't have an attendance problem at that point. You know, if you share questions that you'd like to have asked that are any different than ones that's here in the past. I think, as Don said, you want to move it forward, so there's ways we can make it accomplished.
Yeah,
rather
gotta get it
than
done.
impediments. Right. Actually, so they're gonna be at the school and Concom will be
Be
here.
here.
How are we gonna handle the Zoom issue, Bob? You only have one Zoom account per town.
Yes, Conservation Commission has a Zoom account. So that I have to talk with Bonnie tomorrow
Okay.
to have them set up a session with their Zoom account, so.
And
We
the
can only-
intern,
we only
intern
have
goes
our-
where?
Pardon?
Who gets the intern?
Um,
No, seriously.
Well,
I mean,
I had a
probably the
discussion
Concom, I think they're
today.
less experienced than if
Yeah.
you're gonna be a
I think they get the intern and I'll show up at the
planning board.
planning board.
They need a microphone at Thornton Burgers too.
We
Oh,
have
yeah.
one. We have a second microphone.
Like
Because they-
amplified microphone.
Because
Oh,
they
one of
couldn't-
those,
they
okay.
couldn't- Am I right? It was very difficult to hear.
You know, that'd be good for town meeting as
Okay.
well. These are things we should be looking ahead to
All
town
right.
meeting. Bob, speaking of that, I mean, did you look into the projector? I mean, that would be good for any meetings for where we have applicants that want to do screen sharing, if we could get that going.
Well, I'll see what I can do for Wednesday night, but
Best Buy.
we're gonna, yeah, okay.
All right, thank you. Onward, fire station expansion. You guys tour on Friday? I had,
We did, I'd have to say, you know, I think Wilbraham was excellent host. We learned quite a bit over there.
Very informative.
Very informative. A little better situation than the limitation that we saw at East Long Meadow, because they were space limited with that footprint. recall.
yeah.
Wilbraham, I think, was able to take advantage of theirs. I think the connectivity that they had with their police station worked out better, maybe because both projects were newer and the police station went in later. Craig,
Yeah.
I think could speak to the fact that certainly from a digital standpoint, it was much better
Communications.
managed over there.
Yeah, everything's laid out, and I like the way that they flowed too, because they wrapped their facility around the bays.
Mhm.
So no matter where you were in the bunks, the kitchen, you had access to a truck
Right.
immediately without having to run down a hallway and bump into somebody.
To get back to Don, your point about the mission is to get out to the truck,
Yeah.
and they really put that at the forefront of what they did. So the layout there was very good.
I will say, out of both facilities we visited, they both said that they wish they had a bigger space, because they're running out of space.
Oh, who doesn't
The
say
same
that?
with
Who
your-
doesn't say that at
Who
home?
doesn't-
too?
Right.
Yeah, right.
Same house.
We need a bigger house.
Yeah. But good country.
And I think both East Long Meadow and Wilbraham were heavily into the EMS field.
Mhm.
So they both have more of their daily calls or EMS related.
Right. I think we'll get a chance to go see Munson shortly.
Munson?
We'll get that.
Where are we on with Munson?
You tell me. They're happy to accommodate you whenever you want.
Perhaps Thursday would work out well for me if it would you gentlemen.
Tuesday, I'm in Boston. Thursday would be good,
Thursday.
As long as it's early.
early.
Okay, like before, you know, like the same
4 in
thing,
the
11
morning.
o'clock. if you
Yeah,
want.
yeah.
11 is good?
11 Thursday, so be it. Make it so.
That is Yom Kippur.
What?
That is Yom Kippur.
Well, I'm good with that.
All right.
I'm good with that. Okay, we have our financial team here to talk about the special town meeting. Warrant articles.
Everyone but Cliff, we certainly wish the best for Cliff for his recovery. So, is he on Zoom though?
Is he on Zoom? Is Cliff on Zoom?
No,
Okay.
Too bad. I'm sorry, I see Eddie here. Ed, did you have anything to add on the fire station thing?
No, I think everyone summed it up pretty well.
Yeah, a few words, I like that.
So you have a packet with warrant articles, and on the inside, the second page, I think what everyone's looking for, and that is the requests of various departments for additional spending, mostly capital spending, and the cost of that versus the savings in the police budget because of the consolidation with dispatch. The police budget will save $216,123.
One thing, Bob, I had a conversation with Cliff in regards to the upgrades for street signs, et cetera, that we're using the gaming money for. He feels that in his conversation with Jim Podolik, we may need to appropriate that money and use the gaming money as basically just revenue coming in. I don't know if that'd be part of your conversation with Mary when you have that Zoom call, but.
It was not, no. What they asked for was some traffic studies. I asked the chief of police, and he gave us all the data that they have on Allen Street and Summers Road, including accidents. They are also aware that the DOR gave the town $25,000 to design a sidewalk from the senior center down to the commercial district. And they wanted a copy of that. So I tried to find an electronic copy. I couldn't find it, so I asked Ty and Bond, and they sent an electronic copy of that.
Well, I think what Dick is saying, though, is he's saying the expenditure per Podolik, you need to appropriate it. You can't spend it directly from the gaming money. So that might be something you want to like canvas back with.
Oh, yeah,
them.
I'll talk with her. The Gaming Commission is going to meet on the 23rd to make a decision on our proposal. There's a two-step process. I submitted the proposal back in early June. They had a leisurely summer, I guess, and there's a committee that has to review and make recommendations. So that's already happened. They asked for this additional information. And the Gaming Commission itself is going to meet on the 23rd and make a decision.
Right, I think that would just speak to the fact that our submittals are
Yeah.
qualified. I think we're just talking about here how the money handles.
And if we have to appropriate the money and get reimbursed.
Well, that's what Cliff said in his conversation with Podolik was. Dick may.
Yeah, I spoke to Cliff on the Friday, and his concern was, what he was asking for is to put a placeholder warrant article item while he converges with DOR.
Okay.
The steps that you're talking about have to do with the qualification.
Yes.
He's worried that DOR wants us to transfer money from
I
the
see.
incoming,
Okay.
you know, it's certainly boilerplate, and he's trying to get more information from DOR.
Yeah.
But if we put it, before we finalize the warrant,
Right.
put in a little placeholder for that one,
Okay.
just to make sure that we pass the audits.
And that's the question. Now, do we need one for each thing? We bought one thing, we bought another thing, or basically we need one placeholder for traffic improvements based on gaming reimbursement?
Well, we
basically?
certainly can do it all under one article, the motion, we'll have to figure
Might
out
have to go
if it
to-
has to be more detailed.
Okay, good.
But we got a few
We put
weeks
the
to
whole
figure it out.
100,000 under that one article?
Okay.
We put the whole 100,000 under that one article, or just?
Well,
what
no, we
spent?
haven't expended. That's gonna be the next question. Do we have to do it every time we expend something from the 100? Right now, we have bills totaling up that we're gonna have some money left, right, Bob?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so do we have to go back
We may have as
later?
much as half left.
To
Keep authorizing money out of this basically kitty, if you will. Yeah.
quote one of my favorite politicians, that's a great question deserving of an answer.
Thank you. Email me. So I think it might be that if we're only spending, and Bob might tell me, say 60,000 out of the 100 right now. A subsequent year, we know we have 40, we might need a warrant article to authorize 28,000 out of our gaming reserve money for this road or something.
All right, let's run down. So what do we need to do? Let's just do the easy things.
Oh.
Can I just get a clarification on the date?
Yeah, I was just saying, it's not October 8th.
18th.
18th, thank you. Right down below also. October 8th, wow,
18th.
okay, yeah, no.
The system deleted the 1.
Is that it? It's the Chinese, I'm telling you right now, Bob. Get better security. What, now looking at these dates, what's your feel? Do you target a date for closure, and does advisory have a date?
So if we stick to our Monday routine, the Monday prior to this is Columbus Day, I believe. So it's
Is it?
likely we need to have our advisory hearing on the 4th.
Okay.
4th,
So
October 4th. That's like,
that'd be our time frame in terms of
3
needing to
weeks
get
away.
Okay,
some
That's like-
resolution to all of this pretty quickly.
yeah, so I think,
3
you know, if we targeted the 27th for closing the warrant, which I don't think, Don, we really anticipate much more going on here.
September 27th.
Yeah, take a formal vote to close. Actually, you know, you want, with this thing here, you want to take a vote to close it right now, we don't have to like, that allows us to dress it up and whatever, maybe even the 20th or not, yeah.
Let's leave it on the 27th, we can always just. All right, let's look at so the assessor's clarification change.
Going down
Yeah, we're gonna go,
Oh, that
we're
one.
gonna do the easy stuff first, the easy no's first. Okay, let's see. Is that figure correct?
Which is that?
Assessor's classification change, that would put her where?
Grade 6, step 8.
No, I'm sorry. You spoke to that last week.
Grade
right, Norm?
6, step 8.
Yes, that's what I requested, at minimum, yes.
And she's currently a grade 6 step.
She's not currently in a step. She's one of the couple of employees that was hired about the same time they were doing this study,
Oh, okay.
during that time period. And so she was just hired at an hourly rate, an agreeable hourly rate. And when the chart came back, we never, or whoever, didn't place her in a step. They put her in they identified her grade, but not a step. And so they added a 1.5% COLA to whatever she was making. So she was never really put on the chart. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Actually, that's not technically true. She was given a step, but it came in at a rate lower than her current rate. And for those people, they were just given a COLA.
That's correct.
Yeah, so there is a step. I don't remember what it is. I can look it up, on the machine, but obviously this was an increase in the step for
Okay.
education.
Right.
And for the reasons you mentioned at the last meeting, you're making the case, this is an appropriate step and grade for this.
Right, I'm
employee.
saying when we would be considering hiring somebody like that, we would take into consideration some of those experience things I identified that she brought with her when we hired her, that weren't taken into consideration in placing her on a step that was below what she was actually making.
In the packet, there are, I think, 3 email messages that I received from the Board of Assessors about this matter. I think there's one there from the principal assessor also. So,
All right. So, do we need a vote on that? Yes,
Well,
right?
Technically, we have warrant articles that come from as a courtesy, we allow boards and commissions to put warrant articles on. It's their job to do it. We can give our recommendation at the advisory hearing, But I think Doug and Carol would agree, that's typically been the policy. If a board wants to put a warrant article on, we allow it, if it's not egregious to the budget.
I mean, I think that's been the ordinary course.
Yes.
She's at grade 6.
And it's
by
up
the
to them, Don, to get up and make the
Grade 6,
case.
step 8.
Same thing.
yeah, all messages
No,
requesting
currently grade
changes
6,
were
step
saved
6.
and are in here.
When I do the calculation here with the COLA.
You have the updated
You
chart?
know,
Yeah.
so, so,
Same
okay,
thing
so
in building,
that,
same thing
that's,
with the library too.
that's 38,889. So, I guess my point is, we have no objection to it.
So, going on the warrant.
Right.
Yes.
All right.
If you have
You
an
just,
objection-
you will just not take a vote on this.
No,
Okay.
no, my point is, we, as a courtesy, I mean.
Yeah, I know,
So
we're very
we
courteous.
can make that point at the
We're
advisory
very
hearing
courteous.
or at
Just
the
ask
town meeting.
Just as the planning board, yes.
No, right?
The advisory will take the vote, make a recommendation to a town meeting.
Fine, okay.
Okay, so.
We have no
to clear that
objection,
up,
great.
I'd submit my own, warrant article request for
Yeah.
that, as would any other department that might be seeking similar
Right,
requests.
okay. In the
As
same,
opposed to one. And that's why I wrote what I did, was I wasn't sure if you were gonna do it as a group, say, okay, these we've identified as issues,
Yeah.
see how the town votes, or each individual department present their issues,
Lives and
their
dies.
individual issues.
Right,
So
so-
I will write mine and submit, thank you.
okay. All right, building classification.
You'll just raise the values of everybody to pay for it, right, anyhow, Norm?
Yes, oh yeah. we-
Well, building classification change.
Same thing.
Well, who's
Backup
gonna make,
material in the
That's Karen,
packet for
the,
that as well.
That was where the board voted one way and then voted again back.
okay, but on that one, we have to do that one, because
Right, and they've asked us to.
he
And I
wouldn't.
brought that forward. It's not the building commissioner, it's strictly the admin assistant.
Actually, that's not what the backup material says.
Yeah, I know, and that's why
You say there's a backup material, all there is two motions and an article.
Mhm.
Is there any other supporting documentation that would help the advisory make a decision on that?
we'll put that together, but at this point, it is strictly just the admin assistant, not the building commissioner.
Yes, I can give you a packet, which I didn't include tonight because it's 30-some pages, and we were.
Okay, so you're saying the motion that's on this piece of paper will not be made?
I don't see, who wrote that? Was that the motion you wrote, Norm? Who
No,
wrote it?
this is something in the back, toward the back that Bob gave us. It's one article and two motions to change 3 different salary lines.
Can I ask a clarifying question around process
Mhm.
related to the Collins report? So this is all, looks like corrections to what came through the Collins recommendation that we
Right.
all,
Right.
we approved last year. So these exceptions now, what's the precedent this is setting to change these grades for some staff that are different than what Collins recommended?
And that's kind of a question I think I had for the board as well. In the past, we had a personnel committee that would work with, either prior to or work with the town administrator to resolve these issues. We really haven't defined going forward. We're not going to go out and call Collins every time we have a question. We have to be able to find some way we can accommodate grade changes, step changes within our own.
Well, and there needs to be some central filter for that. Each board can't just decide that they want to take a shot and make a change, because then we're going to be back where we were last year, the year before, with, it being every which way.
Right.
So I thought that there was something embedded in the Collins report, and I may be wrong, that had a process for that, whether it was through the town administrator or through the board, something, and I just can't recall what it is, but I don't want to lose sight of a process we might have established.
There is a process in the employee handbook. And I won't read the whole thing, but a department which wants to have a position reviewed, they do so annually. They have to submit a position description questionnaire to the administrator, who then goes through a process with that.
So did that happen for each of these, or are we
No.
just looking at little?
No, but
emails?
the position description questionnaire, at least I can't find it. It may have existed, but I don't have a copy of it. So I was thinking today that, and I was refreshing myself on this afternoon. And I thought, well, I got to go find that position description questionnaire, get it out to the departments that would like to have reviews.
Yeah, and I think if you can't find that, Bob, because that might be been referencing kind of the old system that they were using, is that
Right.
there's some format that Collins used that we can duplicate.
Yes,
So that gives you the information you need in order to make
yeah.
an informed decision about making these adjustments. So I don't want to go back to where we were
Aren't we
several years
making these
ago.
adjustments because they were misclassification?
But who says they're misclassified? is my
Well,
question.
then we don't have to do it.
But just, they might be, but I don't know
Mhm.
if there's documentation to demonstrate that they were, that there's been an evaluation as to whether they were misclassified. Did Collins come back and say, oh yeah, you're right, we missed that step, or did they go to Collins this time, or did they just go to Bob, or?
Well, I think
Collins is wrapped up, basically, but there is in the packet some email messages that went back and forth to Collins from individuals in various departments that wanted to have their grade or step reconsidered, their grade.
They did redo the
reconsider.
library one.
Right,
You know, that was a Collins-approved grade change, if I'm not
Correct.
mistaken.
yeah, right. And that material's in here too, those messages from Collins are in this packet.
Right, and just like when Norm last week presented what he felt were, I don't want to say flaws, but inconsistencies with how they evaluated other communities against our community. And that's in that documentation, I think is in the folder as well, that they really looking apples to apples. Am I summarizing Norm correctly, or?
I guess,
So-
and maybe, you know, I just got this tonight, so I haven't had
Right.
a chance to look at it, but, you know, Norm's a pretty articulate guy and pretty persuasive when he gets in front of you. And so he may be able to justify that.
Mhm.
Another department that wants to make the same case might not be.
Mhm.
And I don't want it to be based on who's at the table, but based on some, you know, kind of, you know, impartial evaluation
Right.
process.
I will say to the building one, I'm not sure where, I did already speak to, there's one article and two motions. The first motion, as I told Hobie, is just labeling. He would like the label, instead of saying on the salary 5.1, to say building commissioner instead of building inspector.
That's why it says make a motion to raise and appropriate.
Raise and appropriate the misclassification. There is no money to it. He didn't understand. That's just how you guys type.
Okay.
He
And
feel,
The other thing is you're doing your research on this. Be careful on steps versus grades. You know, the step thing we talked about in Kelly's case and actually in Hobie's case, when I first met with you people, when I was doing the data crunching, that the step system that we implemented here, the Board of Selectmen voted to implement, may have failed some people who have additional educational requirements. By pointing out Kelly and Hobie at that time, is where that was reasonable. Doing grade changes without a process, that's a little scarier.
Just quickly with Hobie, under state statute, he is a building commissioner because he did the schooling and he is certified. He is not a local inspector any longer. So making the change in his title makes sense.
but he wasn't looking for an increase in dollar amount, changing the title on the sheet.
So,
This year, I will say this year.
so the entire 2364 is an appropriation for the clerk position.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And then the library one, you said you had,
The library, actually, this is a holdover from the annual town meeting. These figures were finalized shortly before, minutes before town meeting. So the agreement with the library was that we would push it over to the fall rather than change all of our numbers for town meetings.
and this is retroactive to the start of the fiscal year. This
Right, this
number.
would go back to July 1. My understanding is this was done, Mary Ellen, I believe, was involved with it. This actually wasn't Collins' input.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, let's do something easy. Police cruiser.
Police cruiser will
What color is
cost
that, Don?
$53,000, $39,000 for the vehicle, $13,000 for the lights and equipment. Also, we should keep in mind that they turn in the old vehicle, and they do get some value from that. The chief, I had a conversation with the chief, he said, normally we look for 7,000, but we don't think the vehicle with over 100,000 miles is gonna bring us $7,000. It's not quite a jalopy, but it's probably in the range of 3,000 to 4,000.
So why are we buying this? Is replacing what?
We have three cruisers that are over 75,000 right
A
now.
police cruiser was authorized at the annual town meeting, which he will be ordering, or maybe has already ordered, and should be delivered towards the end of the year, the calendar year. It will replace a police cruiser that will have over 100,000 miles. And he's requesting a second car to replace another cruiser, the second mainline cruiser, that will also have over 100,000 miles by the time of expected delivery. You may remember that last year he ordered a cruiser, I believe in November. It was supposed to be delivered in January, but because of COVID, chip shortage and whatever, production was delayed and it wasn't delivered until July of this year. So this would replace two frontline cruisers that will have over 100,000 miles when the changeover occurs.
If we don't take advantage of this window, we'd be looking at next May, and delivery of that, even assuming that we don't ask for next May, would be the end of the following calendar year, and you're probably looking at 120,000 on that car at that time, Bob. Pretty
I'm
much
sure they will,
a year
yes, I'm
later.
sure they will.
Yeah.
Do we know if the police cruisers are gonna get first priority on the assembly line? Because I think GM was just shutting down some of their assembly.
Well, the
line
biggest
production.
problem is chips. I think you.
Right.
That's the thing.
But are they gonna get priority is my question, you know, we don't know.
Also, the department is changing over from Ford Interceptors to Chevy Tahoes. One reason for this, according to the former chief, is that they're experiencing that Chevy Tahoes will last 4 years typically, rather than 3. That's what I was told. And one downside to this is that the equipment can't be transferred over. In the past, they were able to use the equipment for several vehicles. Now, when you transfer the old stuff from the Fords, can't be transferred to Chevys. So you have to buy new lights and equipment for each new vehicle. That's the 13,000.
Yeah, but just quickly, the capital planning has been trying to get a handle on the criteria that's being used for replacement of vehicles. Historically used 100,000 as the trade-in figure. And as a result of some comments made a couple of years ago actually, I believe it was at one of the advisory hearings, we've been working more closely at whether or not that should be a higher figure. And I think, I don't know, has that data come back yet?
Yes. I have the new data. The data that you have on that 20-year vehicle replacement sheet is from April. I have just this past week, new updated mileage data from the police department.
I raise it simply because there may be a recommendation in the not too distant future to revisit that issue of the 100,000 miles.
I thought the last major change, Doug, and correct me if I'm wrong, was when the warranty number really went up higher. You know, we were seeing the powertrain go from a 60,000 mile warranty up to almost 100. And that's when we said, that's your big number. Now let's keep the cars to when, okay, the tranny goes out, now we're spending big bucks. And I don't think they're past
My
100.
recollection also is that we were advised by the previous chief that anything over 100,000, the trading value dropped dramatically. So that, you know, it was a cliff.
The repair costs went up, yeah.
That is true.
I'm not so sure that holds true any longer. So it's something that.
Cars should go down to the court card.
Yeah. So anyway, I bring it up just so that, you know, if there's other recommendations, we won't be surprised.
The updated mileage data will be reflected in the report that's given to the capital planning committee a week from tomorrow.
And I think you have to balance that, as I said, against Bob's talk about the delivery dilemma. You know, if we're gonna wait another full year for a car, is that the best thing at this point? Maybe we go ahead and bite this car now, but take a pause in April at the annual town meeting.
Municipal light plant,
The town has been exploring bringing fiber optic internet service and making it available to all residents. This is something that has been done mostly in Berkshire County, but more recently it's coming into Hampden County. West Springfield just signed a contract to do it townwide. Westfield is now, I think, 80% wired townwide. This would give residents an alternative to the cable company if they chose. They could get internet service and then pick a streaming service if they wanted to. It's costly. It does have a lot of advantages in terms of giving residents choice. Also at a time when many people are working remotely, particularly younger people who are often engaged in tech-type industries. This would allow them to live in Hampden, work remotely, and have a fast connection to the internet. There's now federal money, a lot of it, coming out of Washington for broadband services. In fact, it's one of the 3 identified categories, water, sewer, and broadband, in the infrastructure bill. There's another infrastructure bill coming, I think, soon, that has even more money. The governor is also putting more state money into opportunities for broadband for cities and towns. You may know about the Community Compact Program. That was the program that we used basically to fund the classification and compensation study, as well as ClearGov. He has added a new category this round of grant round. He's added a new category for broadband. And so this is something that's happening, and I don't know that anybody, certainly the board has not made any decision, but it's being explored. And so we had actually Whip City Fiber come into town today. The Selectmen have contracted with Whip City Fiber to bring internet service into the building to replace Spectrum and Charter. It's going to be faster service, save a little bit of money after the installation. And so that's.
But the municipal light thing is.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's just a paper, it's just,
In
it's
order,
just a paper, it's just a paper thing. It costs no money so that we can get the grants, if we decide to do it.
Right. If the town decides to go forward, it must adopt a bylaw establishing something called a municipal light plant. Now, we're not going to create a municipal light plant, but that's the terminology that's used. You have to submit that to 2 town meetings. We're going to have it on the fall, and we'd have it in May. It has to pass the town meeting by 2/3 vote. I don't have the article now. The language is going to be, the legal language is going to be provided by town council.
So this is not a money article.
Not a money.
No, no money.
We're just giving Bob a different hat to wear.
Okay, police budget adjustments, going down, but we're still in negotiations, so there'll be a little bit change there, we don't know what.
Do you think that'll resolve by the hearing date by October 4th?
Yes, fingers crossed.
I've requested that of them, and, you know, that I'd like to have that done by then, because I'm not a big retroactive pay guy, so.
We are also in negotiations for a new contract.
Yeah.
Replace the one that expired June 30th,
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I have all the confidence in the world we'll be done with that. Okay, Match for Small Bridge Program.
You have a lot of material on that. The town got a grant last year to conduct a study looking at parts of town that were vulnerable to severe weather events, particularly flooding. And as the consultants looked at the town, they saw that the area most prone to flooding is over at East Main Street, where Big Brook and East Brook flow into the Scantic River. And in the process, we were over there looking at the culverts, and we saw that the bridge, that East Main Street Bridge, had considerable spalling of the concrete, and it's old and should be replaced. And so this, we then applied for a grant from the Commonwealth of $34,000 to do the design for the project. The design is probably going to cost, they estimate, around $64,000. And so the state is basically saying, you have 34, we think it's gonna cost around 64. The town needs to come up with a share of this.
2005.
So, and they estimate $30,000. So you have, I think it's particularly telling to look at the pictures in that packet, the pictures of the bridge and the culvert area. You can see the deterioration. And if the town is going to take action to avoid future flooding, it seems to me that that's the place to start. Once we get the design done, the town can get 100% funding under the small bridge program. The dimensions, Mark mentioned, measure the dimensions, and the small bridge program applies, correct? Mark?
Yeah, that's what that one is. Small bridge, deed transfer conservation restriction for Amoresco.
Basically, we need to, the land that the state has asked, the endangered district part, endangered species district has asked us to mitigate that by using another piece of town land under a conservation restriction. And that's what they're asking for. Remember, we had the adjacent, I believe it's the 9-acre parcel, town-owned, to the landfill project. And that language, I think Rose is working on with, probably with Bob.
No money.
No money. Legal fees.
Yeah, Assessors Department, we did that, Building Department, we did that. Community Preservation Committee articles, anything there?
I gotta put together a meeting,
Are we doing it?
excuse me?
Are we gonna do the,
Well, I mean, historical has requested to bring forward the historic register again. They had the meeting this past Thursday, I think you want to agree. And it's 9,200, I think it is, in CPA money. The library may also have a request, but I'm gonna speak to Ellen and see if that's something that she'll hold over to the spring.
Library calcification, we took care of that. Highway Department,
I'd like to see those split into two articles. Truck and excavator.
truck and excavator. What are you doing for a truck?
That would be a replacement of an F-250 with an F-250 or F-250.
Do you want to know what color? This is one we're gonna roll it down to the Parks Department.
It says standard Ford single color.
How much?
What's this?
43.
So this estimate that's in here is different?
So the latest one
It says
I sent
39 in the
had
estimate.
been, for 40, not to exceed 43, that was the latest quote I received. And that is for a 23, because from what I've been told, they cease, they don't make the 20, they don't make the 22s anymore. They stopped making them because of the chip shortage. So they're already on to 23s.
So the quote from May is no
We're
good,
gonna get this truck.
the one that's in our packet.
Ziggy's got.
I'm sorry,
we can
no,
buy.
so then there was down at the bottom.
Oh,
highlighted-
if 23 budget.
I think Ziggy Taft's got a leftover Model A we can get, probably doesn't even use a chip. So
Okay.
You're getting a plow with this one?
Yes,
does the old plow work with it, or do we?
8-foot, I'm sorry.
So we're talking about turning the old one over to the Park Department. Are they gonna take ownership of the plow part and all that, and basically,
I think so, yes.
okay,
The way they every few years, they like to change the design of those plows, whether they make a 3-wire to a 2-wire. They'll do something subtle so that you.
sure.
Got to buy a new one.
Yep.
Buy a new plow, so, we do have one for a spare,
American
so
way.
that one could go with the truck.
All right.
And a rubber track
And
excavator also.
hold on, do we need this truck?
We're at the mileage point. We're looking at rolling up to a point where historically we've traded over
How
that
many
truck.
miles you got on it?
It'll approach 70 or something at that point, Mark?
I believe so, yes, I can confirm that.
Doesn't sound like a lot of miles.
Right, and we had the need for Parks Department, so we said we would consider the request rather than getting the truck roll down the next one.
So really, it's a Parks Department truck.
Well, the old one is.
It could be, sure.
Don't you love the
I could
children?
just say too, I mean,
No.
just,
Say
you know,
loud.
being an 08, it's an 08.
Mhm.
These trucks take a tremendous
Beating.
beating, especially during the winter.
You use these for the small plowing as well, right? So,
Oh, yeah, they're zipping around town cleaning things up.
I mean, to ask you, the typical then damage for a truck like that, how is the tranny and something like that? You say it's got 60,000, but it's got 100,000 basically in transmission.
I was told once that you should, whatever the miles are, because it's a type of vehicle, the type of, work it's in.
Yeah.
You could multiply it times 3.
Oh, 3, wow.
Those trucks don't spend much time driving them down the turnpike.
No, and then back and forth.
Plus the back and forth that kills them. Yeah. Especially those new 10 speeds.
So it'll be fine for the,
Excavator.
So this was a thought I had. I wasn't originally asking to have this go through town meeting, more so maybe through one of the grant programs, if it was eligible. But I think it's time that, after going through the process of either renting a machine or hiring a machine out, I think it's time for us to have our own machine. Something this size, it would benefit the town greatly because, it's under 10,000 pounds. All of our employees would be able to run it legally under their licenses. And also to trailer it, none of the employees would need a Class A driver's license. We could trailer that with an F-250 or our 1-ton dump truck.
okay.
Just to keep that weight down so that we don't have to, have a Class A driver's license. So I know a lot of towns are going to these smaller machines, and really, it could
Let me
be.
ask you this, in terms of like a bang for the buck, if you were renting one, how much are you spending on an annual basis to rent one, would you say?
Well, we'll say I can tell you it's $1,000 a day.
And what does this do?
So this
Besides
machine
dig
would allow
holes?
us to.
Trenches.
Ditches, the price that is on the quote includes a couple different types of buckets to do our, we can do anything with it. And it also includes a flail mower attachment.
How about an auger? Is that something you could, or use the small tractor for that, no?
We don't have you mean a hold,
Yeah.
post holder? No.
They do it by
I'm not
hand.
swe would really.
Wow. Like the old,
We
like
don't do
grandpa.
any fences, no.
But I did include the brush cutter because, we can do behind the guardrails, we can do the slopes, we can do the backsides of ditches, and really that machine could be out on a daily basis.
Side of the park,
Rain,
entranceway of the park.
in the heat, in the.
Speaking of excavation, have you done the piping at the park yet?
Oh, we haven't. It is very wet, and it has been. I have the pipe for that now, and I'm just waiting for it to dry up.
So the extra $8,000 on the warrant article is for,
That would be for the trailer. This price does not include a trailer. I think if that's what you're talking
yeah,
about.
I saw 69 and change and then 78 on the,
Oh, right, yes.
so I didn't see anything about a trailer.
Is this a capital planning, look at machine thing?
We talked about that at our meeting, what is the limit for basically, that's just, that's why dump trucks are capital planning. We felt like an F-250 is almost the cost of doing business type thing.
I mean, there was a time not so long ago when we considered police cruisers to be capital expenditures.
Right.
Now they're just an ordinary operating expense.
Right.
I mean, an item like this kind of falls right in that gray zone.
Yeah,
It's like getting a new mower, a new chipper, a new, it's what they need to get the job done.
is this gonna save money from renting?
Considerable.
How often do you rent?
Well, I try to keep the rentals down to, once a year for a month or two from, Tyler Equipment.
So like you rent it every day for a month, so it'd be like $30,000?
Well, no, I'll get a better deal
I mean,
for that,
How would
for that
it
type
be?
of a rental. But then to sub out a machine with an operator from a local contractor, you're looking at $1,000 a day.
Do you know what you spent last year on renting?
Not off the top of my head, but I can.
What's the lifetime of this type of machine? You talking, this is a 5-10 year machine, or?
No, I would guess it's more of a 15, 20 or more.
I guess the payback is.
Longevity's pretty good.
okay.
It's good for trimming along roadways, along the brush and weeds and so forth. If the board will indulge me for 30 seconds, we bought one in
What are
Templeton.
the chances of that?
And it was controversial. They took me out to see it operate for the first time. And they found this tree about 50 years old. They trimmed the branches off, and the machine would go over and grab this thing and pull the tree out. And the worker was standing nearby. He walks over to the hole where they pulled it out, reached down and brought a bottle of French cognac that apparently had been there for 50 years in excellent condition. We had it at the Christmas party.
So
So you say we could
the
find
moral of the story is we should buy this so we can find stuff?
I mean, they're great for trimming along the sides.
Does it have the metal detector option?
And then the DEP came along and said, you took a tree out of the wetland.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Take that bottle.
Treasurer, short-term debt, how much you wanna pay on my credit card?
Currently, the short-term debt, which is the money we borrowed for the dump truck and the police radios, we paid about a third of it off. We have a current outstanding of $375,443. If we're in a position to pay it off, we can save quite a bit on expenses. It's not, the interest rates are high, but there are processing fees involved in renewing. So it'd be nice if we could pay the whole thing off. We'll see.
Okay.
I have to say, you go with Dick's plan there, you look at the next year's debt projection then, you knock that off, you drop the Green Meadows debt, you've really reduced our debt by a third or more outstanding. You then have just pretty much the police station and the continuing Minichog debt at that point, right?
Stabilization,
Well, we currently stand at 1.264.
and I never recall you said like, they like to see us around 10%.
Yeah, so 10%, so, we could put anywhere between 1 and 400,000 in there and be realistic, depending on what we got.
And then what's left over, we're gonna reduce the tax rate.
The balancing act, that's what the policy guys do.
We literally, just tonight, received these documents. We had very preliminary discussions about a tax rate target. And Dick has worked up some preliminary numbers, and so we have to have those discussions in terms of what we can figure out the aim for. Have you had any thought about the tax rate in terms of what
I
range
thought-
it should be in?
I saw Cliff's, and I know that Dick said it was pretty close to what the number should be. I think if you look at last year, the initial projected one versus what it came out to be, there's always that big gap. I personally would like to see the tax rate not go over 20. We're at 1967. Yeah. So, I mean, the realism is, as you said, Doug, the town voted an increase in expenses. You would expect the tax bill to go up. But we have the opportunity to mitigate it quite a bit with our revenue picture. So I think the wise use of money for expenses, one-time purchases, money in the savings account, and then reducing debt and some money against the tax rate, it's just a matter, with your advice, what's that number gonna be?
Historically, the taxes have gone up about 2.5% when we're managing the town well. I'm hopeful that we can do that, or maybe even a little better this year.
Well, why would we raise the tax rate when we have over $1 million in free cash?
We don't.
When if we buy all these, things here, we're zero. Right?
No,
Well, if we don't, the free cash has, some of that's going to have to go to reducing the tax rate, where you're gonna have a 4.6% increase.
Right.
So you've already committed at least a third of it just to.
Why are we having a 4.6% increase?
What's that?
How much did the budget go up this year?
look at that
If
sheet.
we
that-
don't commit free cash to reducing the tax rate, we're going to, with the current appropriations, we're gonna have a 4.6% tax increase.
And I'm asking, how much did it increase this year?
How much
The
of what?
the operations, the budget.
I don't know, we're not done yet. We still have another town meeting.
Well, what happened at the town meeting? How much was the increase?
No, I think it's saying with the current number of the May town meeting, we're at 4-point-something% up. If we don't take
I
action
don't
with
think
our,
so.
we're saying, if you look at projected tax rate that Dick sent out in the Excel sheet today,
Yes.
20.8, 20.6, something like that.
You were, I answered you because you said, why aren't we using the free cash to reduce the tax rate? And what I'm saying is, we're going to have to use a substantial portion of that to reduce the tax rate. Anyway, it's not a new idea, otherwise, we're gonna have a 4.6% increase.
Right.
I mean, that's,
And I'm asking, why are we having a 4.6%
because that's
increase?
what you voted in May.
We leave the
I don't think
expenditures-
so.
Yes, you do.
If we leave the expenditures from May as they are, we don't touch it in terms of allocations, it would be at 4.6%.
Because we're not done yet.
Right, I mean, we didn't make the adjustment to the police budget, we know that was gonna go down a couple hundred, which would obviously knock some percent off of there.
What was
Plus,
the budget? What was the budget? The difference between 21 and 22 was 4.6%?
No,
No.
that's not what we're saying.
There's no translation.
At 21, we finished the process. We haven't finished the process in 22 yet.
All I want to know,
And
Is
finishing
this
the
all I'm-
process, they added free cash.
I'm just asking, in May of 20, we voted X number of dollars at the town meeting. In May of 21, we voted X number of dollars at the town meeting. That was 4.6% difference?
That's not what I said.
Yeah.
I don't have that number, I'll look it up for you when I get back to my office if you'd like.
It's cost the tax rate to reduce that.
It's not that the budget did increase 4.6%, and then the tax rate increased 4.6%. Those things don't line up. Those things don't match. The impact of the expense was 4.6% on the tax rate. But it doesn't mean that the budget went up by 4.6%. That's what you were trying to get at, right, Don?
Why is that?
I'll be happy to give you quite a big spreadsheet that shows you how it's calculated and with the historical data going back 15 years.
I don't need that, I just want to know about last year.
So is that 20.55% tax?
basically, that's it, to pay for the money appropriated to town meeting, less the revenue, less whatever, the tax rate would be 20.55. That would represent roughly 4.5% increase over last year's tax rate.
But that doesn't include the revenue that you put in last year from free cash. So
Yes,
if
it
you,
does.
yeah,
Yes,
The
it does.
21 rate does, the 22 rate, it does not.
does
reflect
not,
that,
22 does not.
because
I
we're
just
not
said
done
that.
yet.
Yeah.
That's what I said, we're not done.
Yeah.
So if you, now the 19.67 was the adjusted tax rate after the actions of the fall town meeting. It would have been 20 something. So we're able to bring that down, we can do the same this year, and I think that's what, like you say, it's always the two-part process.
Well, maybe we have to revisit some of these expenditures.
Miguel's got a question.
Yes?
This highlights for me how confusing this process is to the general public.
Oh, yeah.
So because if this group can't understand it, without a lot of
Well, I
dialogue
don't-
back and forth. I don't see how the town meeting understands it. And I've suggested in the past, and I will suggest once again, that every warrant article that's there have an explanation which says, this means your taxes will go up $200, $100, $10, I don't care what it is. So they can make more
I've
intelligent
discussed this,
choices.
I don't know how many times. And you can't do that because you don't know what's gonna pass.
No, but if somehow you can give them an idea, otherwise they keep going like this,
You can give a range, but
you can give a range, that it will go up between 20
And
and
once you give a
$50.
range,
You're held to that.
you're held to it.
That's why we've been doing an
Well,
explanation on the
They don't understand.
warrant articles, explain why we're
This is
expending.
what our state has developed as municipal finance. If it doesn't make sense, there's lots of other people to hold responsible for it. We have to work within this system as it exists. It's confusing. God bless us.
Mhm.
All right, so you guys are gonna meet on October 4th. Town meeting is the 18th. We'll close the warrant somewhere either the 20th or 27th. Fill in some numbers. I'm apparently the only one who doesn't understand, but it's fine.
No.
I think you have a good sense of it, Don. It's just, I mean, you look at the fact, actually, we already know without spending any more money, the adjustment on the police budget would bring it down right there to begin with. So,
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
What do we got here? We got two things to vote, two appointments to vote for the Cultural Council. Joseph Varney and
Ginny.
Virginia Blake.
And Ginny has been a member,
Yeah,
but she'll be renewed if you would. And Joe Barney is a new candidate and is interested in participating, and we're very happy to.
good.
I guess.
Who's
Who's on the board now? I know it's you, it's Ginny, it's,
Barbara Quinn, Holly Tuttle.
okay.
Diane Mackey has to get off because she's been on for a long time. She's still gonna
Yeah.
help out. And who else?
Betty was not, was she? Betty Howard was
Betty
not?
was, but she's been on for a while now. So there's 5 now if we get Joe on.
Is there a limit or just a working number?
I'm not sure that there's a limit, but I mean, the more than merit actually for the group, but.
Nobody want to share a form every time.
So we have a motion.
I make a motion to renew, to reappoint Ginny Blake to the Cultural Council for a term ending in 2024, and to appoint Joe Varney, Camp Director, to a term ending in 2024.
Second?
All in favor? All right, we have selectmen's reports. I think. The next selectmen's reports.
I think we're all aware of where we stand with the planning. We have a COA board meeting tomorrow. This is the first one. They generally don't have a meeting in August. There is a meeting for Housing Authority at the end of the month. They were not able to get a quorum at the last meeting. And I'll attend the Concom meeting and report back on the water project for, I think we were gonna have a capital planning meeting tomorrow night, and Bob has pushed that to next week because of conflicts.
Town administrator, excuse me.
Historical Commission had their meeting on Thursday to go over the National Register. Very informative session, a lot of input from citizens. Residents came and expressed concerns, and they took home a lot of good information. I think it was a very positive response.
I don't know why my house is.
Geographical area.
Town administrator report.
Okay, most of my time the past week has been involved with planning board vacancies and preparation of the special town meeting warrant. Police negotiations are underway. I did receive a call tonight at about 5:45 from the head of the union, and he said he was sending over an update on their proposals, which I will bring up in the executive session. We are approaching spending the ARPA funds, and we know several things about this. It is not required there's no approval required from town meeting. We can spend these funds with the approval of the Board of Selectmen. And I guess we need to come up with a process for determining how we will expend the funds. Do we want to have a committee? Do we want to just have the board look at some options?
We're gonna have that forum.
Then why didn't we have a town meeting vote to expend the money for the Main Street water?
Yes, we didn't have to.
Oh, that's,
But I
Neither one.
was also extending the
North of
district, extending the district. We were talking about a forum. I think there's some disagreement about that.
Yeah, I don't know if we really need a forum. I mean, I don't think we need to rush to spend these ARPA funds. We have a couple of
But we
years.
have until 2024 to
So
spend the money.
there's no rush to say, hey, we need to appropriate this money for whatever project. I think we need to see what comes across our table and see what fits
Well,
into
I
the
think,
model.
the only reason I would have the forum is to explain to people just exactly that.
Okay.
And also to see what things that they might have to say that we might want to spend it on. I mean, they might have.
I agree with Don. I thought that's how we left it, always said,
Well, we're
let's
gonna
wait
do it
till
after
after town meeting.
Do it
Right,
after town
yeah.
meeting.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's basically it. I've already mentioned the gambling commission and that information. And we did meet with Whip City Fiber today. Actually, I think they more or less completed their work today.
Ready to flip the switch.
So they're gonna cut over probably tomorrow. And our relationship with Charter Spectrum will end.
What do we need to do to cancel with Charter? Because we're month to month right now, right?
I think the contract expired.
Yeah, we're just month to month.
Yeah, it expired month to month.
Okay,
So that's
anything
the
else?
report.
Yeah, Bob, don't we have a meeting tomorrow
We do.
with Amoresco?
Yeah, and you mentioned the capital planning committee meeting has been moved ahead 1 week.
All right, the next on the agenda is to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the police union. I would suggest we go into executive session as to do so, if not to do so, would be detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position. Entertain a motion.
So it's Greg's turn.
Do I gotta read it verbatim here? Mr. Chairman, I motion to go into executive session to discuss the strategy with respect to collective bargaining and litigation if open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigation position of the public body and the chair so declares.
Second,
And we will not return to open session.
John Flynn, aye.
Colonel Davenport, aye. Thank you, everyone. Good night.